Hundreds of Russian soldiers have already surrendered in the Kursk Oblast of Russia.
Russian troops are surrendering rather than obeying the cannon fodder orders.
Videos began to flood social media of dozens of Russian soldiers surrendering to Ukrainian forces.
In recent weeks, something remarkable has been unfolding on the war's front line. Ever greater numbers of Russian soldiers are surrendering outright, laying down weapons, raising white flags, and even turning against their own commanders. What we see isn't just a failed maneuver or a local collapse. It may be evidence of a deeper unraveling in Moscow's war effort. One dramatic case stood out in Dobropilya, where, after a failed push deep into Ukrainian territory, entire Russian detachments reportedly surrendered en masse. Ukrainian units, among them the 82nd Air Assault, the 93rd Mechanized Brigade, and the 1st Azov Corps, counterattacked aggressively, cutting off Russian columns as they advanced nearly 10 kilometers toward the Prokofsk Highway. Trapped Russian forces were isolated and given instructions to surrender via loudspeakers and pamphlets as artillery barrages converged and drones hovered overhead. By mid-September, several hundred Russian troops reportedly walked out in a single sweep with their hands raised, forcing Ukrainian forces to temporarily halt their operations in order to process the large number of captured people. According to unverified figures, over 1,100 Russians have been killed in that area since August 4th. During a particularly intensive 3-day period, Ukrainian accounts put Russian losses at 206 killed, 73 injured, and 38 seized. The psychological impact has been stark. What looked like another frontline reversal is now being read as a collapse in morale, a signal that troops are losing faith in their leadership and that mass surrender is becoming a choice rather than a last resort. And Dobropilya is not alone. Earlier in the campaign, in the Chasiv Yar sector, reports emerged of a platoon outright refusing suicidal orders and allegedly executing their own commander before surrendering to Ukrainian forces. The story quickly circulated. Under no cover, under drone surveillance and facing overwhelming firepower, the soldiers judged the mission futile. Rather than follow a death sentence, they staged a mutiny and offered themselves up. The fact that such stories become popular is telling in and of itself, regardless of whether every detail is true or just part of wartime folklore. Ukraine publicly denies Russia's assertion that it has complete control of Chasiv Yar as of July 2025, claiming it is propaganda. The conflict has been raging since April 2024. The rugged, forested terrain of Chasiv Yar, which is divided by canals and the Donbas Canal, is seen by analysts as benefiting defenders and making any significant advance expensive. Although there is little independent confirmation, Russia maintains that it has cleared thousands of structures and achieved significant achievements. Even accepting regional control, many observers consider the capture more symbolic than decisive. The high losses and prolonged fight cast doubt on whether the gains are worth the cost. Still, when surrender enters the narrative of places as contested and strategically framed as Chasiv Yar, it compounds the message. In some places, Russian units no longer simply lose, they lay down arms. Going further back, this pattern has repeated. During the 2022 Kharkiv counteroffensive, Ukrainians made rapid advances, reclaiming over 12,000 square kilometers, and Russian units, at times disoriented, abandoned equipment, fled in civilian garb, or walked off. In response, Ukraine launched the I Want to Live hotline, offering Russian soldiers a path to surrender safely. Thousands are said to have used it. More recently, in the Kursk region, Ukrainian operations forced fortified Russian positions into untenable status, supply lines cut, drone pressure unrelenting, and morale crumbling. Some foreign contingents, including reportedly North Korean fighters embedded in Russian ranks, were among the first to break. In one alleged incident, a miscommunication led to friendly fire with Chechen units, prompting panic and rout. In another, more than 100 soldiers from Russia's 488th Motor Rifle Regiment reportedly emerged clutching their rifles and hands raised after drone surveillance made their isolation total. In a cross-border raid, Ukraine is said to have captured more than 1,000 Russian fighters, including from Moscow's so-called elite Chechen Akhmat units, and broadcast their surrender widely to send a message. Surrender is a valid, survivable option. Each of these episodes chips away at a narrative of invincibility and illustrates a cumulative strategy. Ukraine is not only taking ground, but also using surrender as a tool to erode will, unsettle command chains, and weaken cohesion. What makes these surrenders especially potent is how Ukraine turns them to its advantage. Prisoners become leverage. Timely exchanges are arranged to maximize pressure, bolster morale at home, and send symbolic messages to those still in the fight. Over 3,000 of Ukraine's own soldiers have reportedly been sent home through swaps since the start of the conflict, from locations that were previously believed to be lost, such as Mariupol, Bakhmut, Donetsk Airport, or Zaporizhzhia. Ukraine has turned losses into wins by combining breakthroughs with prisoner returns, following large surrenders like those in Dobropilia. Another aspect is media amplification, where videos showing Russian prisoners being treated decently, getting medical care, or talking to their relatives are extensively shared without going through Russian state media filters and into the information sphere. It is important that the story be confronted. The imposition of dread through the rule of law and execution becomes ineffective when a Russian soldier witnesses his friend alive, fed, and then brought home. This is a component of a larger psychological battle and is not incidental. Over time, as surrender becomes less stigmatized and more visible, control over frontline units loosens. Command cohesion phrase. When soldiers conclude that survival matters more than orders, the system begins to break from within. In that sense, the fact that surrender is permeating the battlefield is more than a symptom. It may be a cause of weakening Russian resolve. So, the wave of mass surrenders, whether in Dobropilia, Chasiv Yar, Kursk, or earlier in Kharkiv, isn't merely episodic. It may be the early strains of a systemic unraveling. If soldiers no longer believe in the mission, if commanders are distrusted, and if surrender is seen as a viable path, then Russia's war machine risks collapsing in stages. The battlefield is still active, the fighting fierce, and many outcomes uncertain, but the psychological dimension is shifting. What began as tactical setbacks may now be strategic cracks spreading through the rank and file. And as that happens, the war changes not just in territory but in mind.